welcome to my podcast. Today I'm going to talk about another common case, and it's very important, and it's one of the GMC rules and guidelines, and it's something that you would expect in Lab 2 as well. So basically, you have to introduce yourself as we always agree, double check the patient name, date of birth. It might be a lady, it might be an elderly man, it might be something that in duty or the GP been visiting an elderly, whether a woman or a man, in their home or probably in a care home. And the patient might feel like vulnerable and not able to talk, or maybe they're going to talk when they are alone with you and confess to you what's going on. So the patient might say, doctor, I feel that the carer is taking my money, or the carer is not treating me well, or abusing me, or maybe an old lady that you just overhear that her granddaughter or her daughter or any of the member of the family demanding money from her and asking her persistently and pressuring her. So all of those kind of things you have to bear in mind. It's under the title of safeguarding adult, and it's an abuse. So from that concept, a CARE Act 2014, it has been found that there is 10 kinds of abuse. So it could be a physical abuse, could be a domestic abuse, could be sexual abuse. It could be a psychological, which include emotional abuse, threats of harm, abandonment, deprivation of contact, or it could be material abuse or financial abuse, whereby someone will control you and all the time demanding money, or it could be also modern slavery, which basically you have like a controlling companion, which will exert some sort of controlling, and it's usually seen in human trafficking, forced labor, or organ harvesting, or domestic servitude. And it's basically this kind of person. It might be a lady who speaks little or poor English, and it's not even registered with the GP, and could have a suspicious medical record. Another form of abuse is discriminatory abuse, whereby it's like a hate crime, which will not allow to use the service, or organizational, like care home or a hospital. So it's basically the service is poor, or there is poor professional practice or conduct. And the last two is neglect and self-neglect. So neglect and act of omission, it's basically seen in children, where the adults or the responsible adults fail to provide the essential care needs and food, clothing, health services, heating, medication, or education for children, teenage, adolescent. Like in certain cultures, sometimes when a girl reaches a certain age, they tell her, okay, that's enough for you. There is no further education, and maybe you just need to work and earn, or maybe you just wait for a groom to get married. For the self-neglect, it's mostly applies in adult, so it's include like poor personal hygiene or little regard for the general health and productivity toward harvesting away, which means that you can't throw things and you just keep piling up them in your place or in the space, which will cause a lot of clutter, and it won't look nice, and it might just harbor a lot of things that is not good for the health. So in that situation, whenever it's raised an alarm, you need to put the local authority or the police in attention for that, because the adult welfare is believed to be when the suffering or likely to suffer an abuse or neglect. And according to the WHO, it's been estimated that 6% of elderly in the UK are victims of abuse, and 1 in 20, it's by their family or a member of family. And the modern slavery, it has been estimated it happened between 1 and 236,000 population. The other form of abuse, which been seen in certain culture, and it has nothing to do with the religion. However, people sometimes they try to bring religion in place in order to defend the act they do, which happen usually in young girls until 16. It's the FGM, which is female genital mutilation. And it's been estimated that at least 200 million women and girls are alive with this kind of conduct and living as a result of this harmful practice. For the abuse that I mentioned for the psychological, it could encroach or cover a wide area, such for instance like humiliation, blaming, controlling, intimidation, coercion, harassment, or verbal abuse, or could be cyberbullying, or isolation, or unreasonable and unjustified withdrawal of the services or supported network. So in that regard, it's important to assess any adult mental capacity, and the Safeguarding Adult Section 42 inquiry has improved according to the NICE guideline 2021. As before, it has been seen that adults and elderly were exposed to multiple forms of abuse, as for instance, they were falsifying evidence, or there is missing record, or there is frequent deterioration of their health in the care home, or misuse of their money. And according to that as well, there has been more than 800,000 residential care homes, 4,200 nursing homes in the UK that provide support to around 410,000 elderly people. So in that regard, you have always to measure or assess the mental health capacity and assess it, and it's always stemmed around four things. Basically, is about understanding the information being delivered, ability to retain that piece of information, and according to that, weigh things and make a decision and communicate it back. So this is the four essential elements of any assessment for a mental capacity. And never assume any person has no capacity until proved otherwise, even if they have done anything unwise or a bizarre decision. Always enable people to make their own decision. If, however, without any capacity, it's always mandatory to act in the best of their interest, even if they have a family or a carer or a relative. They are not there to decide for them. They are not the decision maker. So, if, for instance, none exists and you are in doubt, always refer to an independent mental capacity advocate service, and never base your decision on any patient age or appearances or behavior or condition. So never. It's always mandatory to encourage them to make their own decision. There is another case which fall under this umbrella as well. It's Jehovah's Witness, and it's centered around the blood transfusion, which basically the RBC and WBC and fresh frozen plasma and platelet. So say for instance, a patient who had lost their mental capacity, and before then they signed a form that they don't want to receive any blood whatsoever, even if their condition has been deteriorated, and there's a documented form in that regard. You can't give them a blood because there's an evidence stating so, and in that regard, say for instance, they have a bleeding or their blood pressure is very low and you need to try to save their lives. The only thing you can use is basically IV fluid, which is crystalloid replacement, just to help. Because in this kind of situation, though it's really very difficult and exceptionally difficult, it's the patient belief and value on the religious grounds which should be respected and taken into consideration. Say, for instance, you have another patient who is also Jehovah's Witness and did not document this wish. So the judgment here is the responsibility of the clinician in that kind of emergency situation. However, every effort should be made to avoid the use of any blood product, because in their religion it's forbidden and they don't want it. And any case of those kind of adults or anywhere you suspect and there is element of abuse, always assess the risk for suicide or homicide risk. For the FGM, it's basically 4 categories. And the first category is basically about clitoris, so it's clitorectomy, so which can be partially or totally removed. The second degree is excision of the clitoris with the labia minora. The third is infabulation, which is basically narrowing of the vaginal orifice by creating a seal by cutting and stitching labia minora together, or including the labia majora with or without clitoris excision. And the other form of the harmful procedures is like breaking, which making a hole, piercing, incisioning, scraping, which is basically introducing something in the vagina to make it narrower. In certain cultures, I believe that certain solution you can use, especially after delivery, to narrow the passage, or the last one is cauterization. So it has been found most of the FGM by about 85%. It's mostly falls between the first and the second category, which is basically the sensitive part, which is equivalent to men, the erecting organ. It's the clitoris, or excising the clitoris with the labia minora, which is the fleshy meat inside the labia majora. However, the FGM has no health benefit at all or a religious ground. However, some people, they defend it. It's like an act to to stop women from feeling pleasure or going and doing sin or haram, and to keep them like pure. I mean, in religion, it has nothing to say with that, but people, they just defend that, and some people, they wrote papers and things like that as a qualitative study, just to base and defend this harmful act. However, from the other side, it can cause too much bleeding, it can cause recurrent infection because of the tools being used, which can't be, clean or sterile, because usually it's used by certain women who are elderly in the family, and they think this is a practice should be run from one generation to another. It can cause also cyst. It causes problem with maturation, and can cause complications certain ages when they give birth. And it's a common practice in certain area of Africa, Middle East, and Asia. I remember when I was an undergraduate back home, when I was doing my intern in gyno-obstetric, certain African women, they were coming and they had this practice, and it was an agony to open up that passage, and obviously the attendant doctor had to close it later on after the delivery of the baby, and it's really something very shameful and shouldn't be done at the first place. So by that, I hope that I covered one of the most important category of the abuse that you could face and could think of, and whenever there's any suspicion or any alarm about that, never let it go. And it has been, say for instance, under the category of the discriminatory abuse, it's morely associated and related with the height crime, which has been risen by 41% since the Brexit. So that's something to remember and know about. Thank you.